Hi, welcome to Vibrant Health and Wellness. This workshop will hopefully answer the question, what should I eat? As well as a few other questions you might have along the way. It can be confusing to know what's a good choice and it shouldn't be. And while we don't all need to be scientists or nutritionists, unfortunately, in today's food environment with false advertising and misleading claims, it's important that you are a savvy purchaser and cook. There is nothing more important to your health than what you put in your body every day, many times a day. And you are smart enough and capable enough to understand this. So you have heard it said that you are what you eat. And this is not just a cliche. There is so much truth to this. I would go even further and say you are what your body can absorb and assimilate. I'd like to start with an analogy that seems to put into perspective the choices that we have. We all know that when we are breathing polluted air that we will get sick. You know it's not good for you, and that in the long term, if not immediately, it will lead to disease. This is because you're not just breathing in one breath of toxic compounds every now and then, but with every single breath you are bringing into your body those toxins. It's the same with food. We eat multiple times a day, every single day. So if you are taking in unhealthy food that is harmful to your body, you're going to get sick. And you should know that in the long term, if not immediately, it will lead to disease. The choices that we make today will affect us tomorrow. So let's talk about what are some healthy and nutritious options. So there are 3 main macronutrients. They are protein, fat, and carbohydrate. All food is made up of 1, 2, or all 3 of these components. They each play a vital role or many roles in the proper functioning of our body. We have a very intricate body made up of thousands of systems and chemical changes, and eating proper nutrients means it will have the raw materials needed to function the way it was designed. It's like when you build a house, you want to make sure you use quality materials like the wood and the brick. We tend to label these macros depending on its highest content, or rather food. We label food depending on its highest macro content, regardless if it contains any of the others. For example, meat is often considered a protein because it's the predominant macronutrient found in meat, even though meat also contains fat. A healthy diet should include all 3 of these macronutrients. Let's start talking about protein. A protein is made up of smaller molecules called amino acids. We need 20 different ones, but our bodies can make some of them. So 9 of them we have to eat from our diet. The very essence of who you are is made up of protein. Your bones, your muscles, soft tissue, and skin are all made from protein. Amino acids are also the raw materials for the communicators in our body, such as enzymes, antibodies, and neurotransmitters, as well as builds the receptor sites for these communicators. Eating protein means that you will experience a greater feeling of fullness. In fact, our bodies are designed to continue eating until we have consumed enough protein. If you don't have enough, you're not going to feel full. So if you don't eat your protein, you are more likely to overeat. In fact, a study of school children in JAMA 2012 showed that those who ate omelets for breakfast, as opposed to instant or steel-cut oats, ate 81% less at lunchtime. The children who ate the oatmeal had higher levels of insulin, sugar, adrenaline, and cortisol. So it's important to a healthy diet to get adequate amounts of protein. It also improves mental health, as proteins are the precursors to neurotransmitters that control our mood. It's also the macro utilized to stimulate muscle growth, which can slow down the aging process and help to prevent disease. Let's look a little deeper into both of these. You might not have really heard that protein is vital to our mental health. You do, however, likely already know that many mood disorders have to do with too little or too much of different types of neurotransmitters. In many cases, depression, anxiety, and ADD can be improved by adding their corresponding amino acid into the diet. You can even find these in supplement form. Dopamine, which helps us focus, as well as gives us that feel-good, rewarding feeling when we engage in certain behaviors, is built from the amino acid tyrosine. Tyrosine also makes epinephrine, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter that helps us feel happy, and when we don't have enough, we feel depressed. It's made from tryptophan, and from tryptophan, the body also makes melatonin. GABA is a relaxing and calming hormone, and if you lack it, you might feel anxious, and it's primarily made from taurine. All of these amino acids are mostly found in animal-based foods like beef, chicken, fish, and animal products like dairy, eggs, and cheese. A few are also found in some nuts and seeds. Protein is key to muscle mass, and muscle mass is key to not only living longer, but to the quality of your life as you age. Maintaining as much muscle mass as possible as we age is critical, as sarcopenia, or the loss of muscle mass, is the greatest indicator of early death, disease, and frailty. Listen to this. We lose 3 to 8% of our muscle mass each decade after the age of 30, and even more after 60. This is because as we age, our bodies don't use proteins as effectively, and we need a higher amount of protein, specifically the amino acid leucine. Leucine has a threshold where it will turn on muscle synthesis. Adults need to consume 2.5 grams of leucine to trigger the muscle growth, which equates to at least 30 grams of high-quality protein at each meal. A note for women here is that the loss of estrogen that occurs leading into, throughout, and after menopause leads to muscle loss, and it becomes much more difficult to put on muscle. So if you haven't gone through menopause yet, it is wise to start building your muscles now. If you are through menopause, there are other things you can do, most notably eating more protein and engaging in resistance training. I recommend that all women over 40 lift weights or do some other form of resistance training. You should aim to get in a minimum of 100 grams of protein each day. You can go even higher, up to your ideal body weight in grams of protein, depending on your goals, but don't exceed 50 grams at each meal, or it can contribute as well to insulin resistance. Here's a tip. In every ounce of meat, you will get 7 grams of protein. So a 5-ounce steak gives you 35 grams of protein, a perfect amount for a meal. Fish will give you 5 grams per ounce. So a 7-ounce fillet of salmon will give you the same 35 grams of protein. One of the most confusing macros is the one we will discuss now, fat. And it's not our fault that it's so confusing. Researchers have been botching this one up for a long time. More recent and better quality research has proven that eating fat does not alone make you fat. It is actually a vital macronutrient in our body's systems. In fact, there is ample evidence that proves the sugar association paid off researchers at Harvard with $6,500 way back in 1967 to say in their study that saturated fat was the culprit in heart disease and not sugar, as the study actually showed. One of the scientists from this Harvard study, went on to be the head of nutrition at the Department of Agriculture, helping to draft dietary guidelines. The result of this deception was that for decades, people were told to eat low-fat food that had been filled with sugar in order to maintain its taste. This has led to Americans becoming addicted to sugar and to the flavor of sweetness. Many organizations today, including health associations, diet programs, and our own government, have been slow to admit that their advice has not only been wrong, but has contributed to the obesity and diabetic epidemics. So now I will tell you the truth about fat. Fatty acids and phospholipids make up the cell membrane. You are literally made up of cells, and so you can only be as healthy as your cell membranes. Fats also help to balance blood sugar and reduce inflammation. Cholesterol, the most feared fat, many people have even been put on drugs like statins to control their cholesterol. And this has led to severe side effects and illnesses. But in reality, you need cholesterol to make all of your hormones. You can have too high of cholesterol, but they are now learning that it is a very nuanced issue and that cholesterol particle size also plays a role in this. So eating healthy fats, and we'll discuss what those specifically are, can actually protect you from heart disease. Fats also keep us warm and protect our organs. Our brains are 60% fat, specifically in the form of DHA, which is an omega-3 fat, along with EPA. So eating ample omega-3 is critical to brain health. If you want to improve your cognitive function, increase your memory and attention, you need more omega-3s. Unfortunately for us, omega-3s are hard to find in nature now. They are in wild things, which we don't eat a lot of, but still exist in high quantities in cold water fish such as salmon and cod. You can also get it from flax seeds, eggs that come from chickens fed flax seeds, and some seaweeds. It's one fat that is highly recommended to be supplemented for most people due to the lack of it in our food supply. Fat does have a higher caloric content, 9 calories per gram as opposed to the 4 that both protein and carbs have. So we don't fill our plates with fat. We balance it and utilize it appropriately by adding it to our plates that already have protein and carbs. The specific amount is going to vary depending on your body type, your metabolic health, and your goals. There are 3 categories of fat: saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated. This refers to the number of hydrogen molecules that are attached to the triglyceride. And they all play a role in the body, and they aren't necessarily on their own good or bad. Monounsaturated fats are predominantly found in the plant foods olives, avocados, nuts, seeds, fish, and shellfish. They have the benefit of lowering your LDL cholesterol and raising your HDL cholesterol. Polyunsaturated fats are the omega-3 fats found in salmon and cod, flax seeds, and walnuts. They have the benefit of lowering inflammation, feeding your brain. Omega-6 fats are found in nuts, seeds, grains, beans, and unfortunately in packaged and processed foods. There's more to this story that we're going to circle back to. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature and are found in animal-based foods like butter, cheese, red meat, as well as some plant-based foods like coconut and palm. This is the fat that has been villainized and accused of raising cholesterol. However, it's important to know that blood levels of saturated fat do not necessarily correlate with dietary intake of saturated fat. In fact, your liver will convert sugar and carbohydrates into the more dangerous fats that lead to heart disease. So the more important health tip to take away here is that eating saturated fat is not necessarily going to make you fat unless you completely overconsume it. As discussed, 5 ounces of meat at a meal is a safe and reasonable amount, giving you many nutrients and a complete protein source that you cannot get anywhere else. I want to take a moment here and discuss grass-fed beef and why it's a healthy choice in our diets. 40% of the fat in beef is made up of monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fat. Of the other 60%, it's saturated fat. But out of that, 1/3 of it is in the form of stearin, a neutral fat that doesn't raise cholesterol. In America, we began industrializing our agriculture a few decades ago in order to get greater outputs at less cost and in more time. The process became for farmers to breed and raise their cattle to 6 months of age on their farm, where they would eat a particular grass that grew fast but caused their guts to bloat. In turn, the farmers would give them antibiotics and hormones to treat this problem and also help them to grow fast. Then they load them onto trucks. They take them across the country to the huge feedlots where they live out their days eating grain made up of mostly corn and becoming obese. The fat in their body then begins to change. It increases the amount of saturated fat before they are slaughtered, packaged, and sent out into the grocery stores. So when you are buying grass-fed beef, you are getting less saturated fat. And this doesn't even account for the amount of foreign meat product that has been imported into our market where we don't even know what their process is. We have no regulatory oversight in that. However, many more farmers today are seeing the benefit of regenerative farming and returning to the less industrialized way of animal husbandry, where the cattle is left to feed on the natural grass, grains, and seeds that grow on their pastures. This produces meat that has much less saturated fat and is more nutritious. So don't be afraid of eating beef anymore. It can be a very nutritious part of a balanced diet, providing both the complete source of protein that our bodies need as well as high quality fat. You just need to look for the grass-fed, grass-finished labels. With the notion that eating fat makes us fat, Americans did what Americans do best. They innovated to find something better than what nature had provided. They wanted to make sure you could still have your tasty fat, but be protected from its alleged bad effects. So, trans fat was developed. It's made through an industrialized process that adds hydrogen to vegetable oil to make it solid. Recalling that our cell membranes are made up of fat, you don't want this to be what makes up your cell membrane. It will make the cell hard and stiff and lead to inflammation and disease. Another fat that has become concerning is one that, when it's eaten in normal quantities, is helpful to the body. Linoleic acid, a form of omega-6. It isn't necessarily harmful in appropriate amounts. The body uses it for a number of functions. The problem has become that we are now eating it in abundance compared to the amount of omega-3s that we eat. Omega-3 keeps the inflammatory effects of omega-6 in check. Linoleic acid is found in seed oils that cause inflammation, like corn, safflower, and soy oils. In fact, in our American diet, the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s has grown from 1:1 to 20:1. 80% of fats consumed in the U.S. come from linoleic acid. It's what most French fries are fried in, and it's in many packaged foods. Here we are at the last macronutrient that I want to discuss, and that is carbohydrates. This macro gets a lot of buzz lately. Should you be on a low-carb diet? How much is too much? How little is too little? Well, let's dive in a little deeper and clarify a lot of misconceptions about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are critical to the proper functioning of the body. However, when I say carbohydrate, we might not be talking about the same thing. You might picture a bowl of pasta, a loaf of bread, or maybe even fruit. Carbs are plants. Eating plants is good for you. You should aim to eat a lot of plants in a day, but in the form of colorful, particularly green vegetables. The variety of colors in these plants indicate the different phytonutrients that are present. For example, blue-purple foods are good for your brain. Blue foods give cognitive support, improve mood, and play a role in neuronal health. Blackberries, blueberries, purple grapes, eggplants, plums, and even purple potatoes are good for your brain. Discovering a greater variety of herbs and implementing them in my cooking has been a game changer. Herbs bring such a richness of flavor and variety to our dishes while packing a powerful nutritional punch. Ginger, turmeric, rosemary, pepper, oregano, and hundreds more are a great addition to your cuisine. Exactly how much carbohydrate an individual can tolerate and eat is going to depend on individual factors. If you are overweight, have metabolic disease, are already experiencing insulin resistance, or are dealing with certain diseases, a lower daily carbohydrate amount will be necessary in order to improve these factors. In addition, the amount of carbs that can be tolerated per meal will be individual. This is because, as Americans, we have completely overeaten carbs, and mostly in the form of bread. Carbohydrates provide fuel for the body in the form of glucose. Glucose is sugar, and although sugar comes in many forms, the effect it has on your body is the same. It raises the amount of glucose in the blood, which triggers a hormone, insulin, to be released from the pancreas. Its job is to usher the glucose into your muscles so you can use it as energy. But what happens when we eat too much of it is that it's stored away as fat to be used at a later time. If we continue to overeat carbs, we not only gain excess fat, but we also have to release more and more insulin as the cells grow to be more resistant to it. Eventually, the pancreas just can't keep up, and we have what is called type 2 diabetes. Diabetes has long-term devastating effects on the body, and it has become an epidemic in America. 1 in 3 Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, and the cause isn't a mystery. The government told us to eat 10 servings a day of grains. Your teachers taught you this in school, and your attentive parents told you to eat them. Now we are sicker than we have ever been. In fact, you can have a very healthy diet with enough fiber and never eat a grain. It's simply not essential to a healthy diet. Both beans and grains and some fruits are very high in glucose content and will often spike insulin. To balance all of this, you must be carb savvy and you must understand your own body. You want to choose carbs that have a high fiber content compared to its glucose content because fiber prevents an insulin spike. Fiber also feeds the thousands of microbes in your gut. Fiber is crucial not only to gut health, but in turn our immune systems. You should aim to have a minimum of 25 grams a day of fiber in your diet. Most people fall miserably short of this goal. One way to increase your fiber content is to make sure you have fiber in the form of plants at every meal, including breakfast. Another tip to know when eating carbs is that pairing it with a fat or protein or both will also help to limit the glucose spike. So don't eat your carbs alone. The bottom line here is that if you are looking to eat a nutrient-rich diet, either to lose weight, to improve your health, to heal from autoimmune disease, to balance your hormones, or any number of other reasons, there are simply some carbs that are not going to work for you and your goals. One of these carbs that I want to discuss more deeply is bread. Grain-based food are the number one source of calories in the SAD or standard American diet, and it's generally in the form of bread and pasta. Eating 2 slices of whole wheat bread will raise your blood sugar more than eating 2 tablespoons of table sugar. So the number one reason to be cautious of bread is because of its high glucose content. The second reason is gluten. Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye-based flours that wreaks havoc on the gut. Without going too far down a rabbit hole, your body hasn't evolved to recognize gluten, so your immune system attacks it along with your own body tissue. It literally loosens the tight junctions in your intestinal lining, so now you have particles getting into the bloodstream that should not be there. This is what is called leaky gut. In addition, the hybridized form of wheat that is now used has a higher amount of gluten in it and causes a higher glucose spike. The last reason to avoid wheat as much as possible is because it is one of the most sprayed crops by glyphosate, an herbicide known as Roundup, has been proven to cause cancer. I know that this is bad news, but you can bake some things at home using alternative flours like almond and coconut flours and many others. These flours have a very different makeup than today's wheat. And that covers the macronutrients that should be included and balanced in your diet. So let's wrap up by summarizing a few points that answer the question we first asked, what should I eat? First, real food, preferably cooked in your own kitchen, so you know what's going into it. And this is the hard part because it's a lot easier to go to Chick-fil-A than it is to shop, cook, and clean after a healthy meal. But it's really the only way to ensure you have a balanced diet. Secondly, eat 5 to 6 ounces of protein or 30 to 40 grams of protein in the form of meat, fish, or even a protein powder. If you choose not to eat animal products, then this is going to look different for you. You should aim to eat a minimum of 100 grams of protein total a day and can even go up more than that. Third, aim to eat vegetables or other plants at every meal. If you are trying to lose weight or are metabolically unhealthy, a good range of carbohydrate is a low 30 to 50 grams total a day, while making sure to keep individual meals properly divided so that you don't spike your insulin. This is going to feel low at first, but then once you are free from the addiction of carbs, you will feel better than you ever have. A healthy individual that's trying to maintain can tolerate up to 100 grams a day in carbohydrate. And at times, it's even beneficial if attempting to keep your progesterone levels elevated. However, again, this amount is going to vary depending on the individual. Finally, the rest of the calories are in the form of fat, in the form of oils, nuts, avocados, or in meat and fish. People who are wanting to decrease their LDL and increase their HDL while improving their insulin sensitivity can eat up to 70 grams of appropriate fats. But again, this will be individual. I highly recommend tracking your food intake until you learn what it looks like. Use apps such as MyFitnessPal to help you know what you are eating and make adjustments. It's not forever, it's just while you are learning. Thank you so much for listening to this workshop. I hope it has helped you become a more savvy cook, grocery shopper, and better aware of how to nourish your body. I also hope I was able to dispel some myths for you and clarify some things. If you haven't already, please contact me for a free consultation and let's work on improving your health according to your individual needs together. Thanks.